Ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. It is with immense delight and profound joy that I take the floor to welcome you to Abidjan, to the 2025 edition of the annual meetings of the Africa Development Bank Group. Akwaba, welcome, bienvenue. Pending the same message from a more authorized voice. Cote d'Ivoire is particularly honored and proud to once again play host to this groundbreaking event here in the host country of the headquarters of the bank. This testifies to the utmost trust, fraternity, and attachment to our home. And in this respect, let me convey my deep-seated gratitude to the President of the Republic, Mr. Alassane Ouattara, whose unstinting support has made it possible to provide support, efficient support to every step of the preparation of this ceremony. Mr. President, sir, thank you for this commitment at the service of Africa. These annual meetings are taking place against a global backdrop which is characterized by a myriad of disruptions and uncertainties, and as such, Africa has no other choice than to get together around its strongest institutions. The African Development Bank, by its Pan-African vision and commitment towards the structural transformation of the continent, positions itself at the very heart of these dynamics. And the theme for this year, which is to make Africa's capital work better for Africa's development, reminds us that Africa is replete with natural and cultural capital and exceptional demographic potential, which should very quickly transform into shared prosperity. Ladies and gentlemen, this year's edition is of particular importance because it will also see the election of a new president at the helm of this institution. And in this respect, allow me to commend the leadership of Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, outgoing president, who over the past decade has really provided the much needed boost, remarkably so, to the bank by a number of transformational initiatives and by the resolute defense of Africa's interests in the international stage. President Adesina, for your exceptional commitment to be at the service of the continent of Africa. My thanks also to all bank staff for the work done. Allow me also to congratulate and warmly thank the organizing committee for the commitment, professionalism, and availability which have contributed a great deal to the smooth conduct of this edition. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the annual meetings of the bank are not only an institutional framework, but also the ideal moment for us to chart the future of our continent. And in my capacity as chair of the board of governors this year, I will invite each and every one of us to enhance our collective dialogue on Africa's priorities, to consolidate strategic partnerships between our countries and the bank, and to build an ambitious vision which hinges on excellence, innovation, and integration. And to conclude, allow me to reiterate our utmost recognition and acknowledgement to His Excellency President Alassane Ouattara, to all heads of state and government, as well as all the senior personalities present in this room for their presence, which gives another importance to this ceremony. And I thank you for your kind attention.
So I have so much joy today. I have so much to say today. So please excuse me, as I will take a little bit of time. But you can be sure that I will not be here next year speaking as the president of the bank. So you can take and deduct all my time for next year from now. I wish to start by saying thank you. Thank you for electing me as president of the African Development Bank on May 28, 2015, right here in Abidjan in this same hall. And Mr. Mambre, who was there at that time, was the minister right here and is here with us today. Thank you for re-electing me in 2020 to a second 5-year term with a historic 100% votes of all the 81 regional and non-regional shareholders, the first ever such in the history of the African Development Bank. Thank you very much. As I have always said, being president of the African Development Bank for me is not a job, it is a mission. Nothing can be greater than to have been given the responsibility, the resources, the mandate, the support, and the platform to help transform Africa, the continent of my own birth. Thanks to you, African heads of state and government, for your incredible support. I made it the hallmark of my presidency with my staff to carefully listen to and for us to understand the needs of your countries and to do all possible within the available resources of the bank to support your economic and development ambitions. Thank you to the people of Africa who daily are our focus. As I say to my staff, the most important part of the African Development Bank is the development part. We must fast-track Africa's development. I am proud that over the past 10 years, collectively, working together, the African Development Bank has been an accelerator of Africa's development. The high fives of the bank to light up and power Africa, to feed Africa, to industrialize Africa, integrate Africa, and improve the quality of life of the people of Africa have been transformational for Africa. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in the past decade, the work of the African Development Bank has impacted the lives of 565 million people. This includes 28 million people with access to electricity, 104 million people with food security, 121 million people with access to improved transport, 128 million people with access to improved health services, 67 million people with improved access to information and communications technology, 63 million people with access to drinking water, and 34 million people with access to sanitation. The bank accelerated regional integration with massive support for infrastructure to support the African Continental Free Trade Area. Over the past 10-year period, under my presidency of the African Development Bank, we would have provided, Your Excellencies, a total of $102 billion in support of Africa. This represents 46% of all the financing of the bank since its establishment in 1964. The African Development Bank financed over $55 billion in support of infrastructure, from roads to rails to airports to seaports to digital and communications, health, water, and sanitation.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and right here in our host country, financing of most of the major urban infrastructure visible in Abidjan, according to the vision of the President, was strongly supported by the African Development Bank Group. I am delighted to announce that under my presidency and with the tireless work of our bank, the financial support of the African Development Bank to Cote d'Ivoire increased by 500% in 10 years. To give you a ballpark, between 1964 through 2014, cumulative approvals for Cote d'Ivoire totaled 2.3 billion euros. But since 2015, the bank has committed, within a mere 10 years, $3.6 billion additional euros, actually, which is actually 1.6 times higher than all approvals over the last 50 years. Dear friend, President Alassane Ouattara is a globally famed economist. And you know, if I do not do that, he's going to perform all the economic analysis of the work I would have done. And this also includes the famed Henri Conan Bédier bridge, and it also includes, Mr. President, your project, the Abidjan Urban Transport Project, and the iconic bridge, which is 1,400 meters long, linking Yopougon to Adjamé, as well as 88 kilometers of urban highway and 89 refurbished junctions. This also includes all the beautiful roads, Mr. President, leading to the new Alassane Ouattara Stadium, where Cote d'Ivoire won the 2023 AFCON. I was there, right there at the stadium with the president, and on that day, I didn't wear the Ivorian colors. I was in blue. Just in case a goal was scored, I would focus on my glasses, and the president was very kind to invite me as he handed the cup. Your Excellency, Mr. Alassane Ouattara, beyond AFCON, I hope that as the bank, we have also scored a goal for Cote d'Ivoire. Thank you indeed, Mr. President.
In Tanzania, we are supporting $3.2 billion standard gauge railway connecting Tanzania to the Democratic Republic of Congo and Burundi. We supported the transport corridor that links Addis Ababa to Nairobi and Mombasa, which today has reduced the time to travel from 3 days to 1 day and expanded trade between both nations by 400%. The bank's last mile connectivity project in Kenya has helped to increase the number of Kenyans connected to national electricity grid from 2.42 million households in 2014 to 9.7 million households in 2024. And this has helped the country to increase electricity access from 36% to 76% over the same period. Also, the Lake Turkana, the wind project in Kenya, is today the largest operational wind power mill in all of Africa. As President Ruto of Kenya said when he conferred me with Kenya's highest national honor, the Chief of the Order of the Golden Heart, a great recognition for the work of the bank. He said, and I quote, "I am proud of the journey we started together 10 years ago. I can see its fruits. Kenyans benefit. Kenyan can feel its benefits." And this is the same all across Africa that I go with my staff. Today, the Kasungula Bridge connection Zambia to Malawi and Namibia is expanding regional trade in Southern Africa. Since 1974, the collective dream of the people of Senegal and of Gambia was to have a bridge connecting both countries. That dream was realized by the African Development Bank and the African Development Fund. This impressive Senegambia bridge and the 24 kilometers road leading up to it has cut travel down from 2 days to less than 10 minutes. The Port Autonome de Lomé in Togo has expanded and been turned into a major transit port. In Comoros, we supported the construction of roads linking the islands. In Egypt, the bank supported Gabal El Asfar, a water serves 12 million residents. It is now the largest water treatment plant in Africa, and is set to serve a total of almost 18 million people by 2040. The bank supported the new Ouarzazate solar complex in Morocco, which is the world's largest concentrated solar power plant at the time of its completion. We launched the Lagos to Abidjan highway corridor, for which the African Development Bank is supporting the feasibility studies, and we have mobilized $15 billion in investment interest towards this. In Nigeria, we are implementing the development of special agro-industrial processing zones in 8 states and the Federal Capital Territory, we have mobilized $2.9 billion to support the establishment of these zones in 28 more states of Nigeria. Your Excellencies, we stood by countries when it mattered the most. The countries that were under sanctions to clear their debt arrears to the bank, including Somalia and Sudan, and all of my shareholders are here, and they have been exemplary in understanding and supporting us through that. And today, thanks to their support and the support from the African Development Fund, Somalia is showing tremendous recovery and resilience. Excellencies, thanks to the African Development Fund and the bank's Technology for African Agricultural Transformation, which we call TAT, Sudan, even in the midst of the conflict, is showing remarkable progress towards achieving self-sufficiency in wheat. With our support, it achieves 50% self-sufficiency in wheat in 2023 and 85% by 2024. We are also standing with Zimbabwe to clear its arrears to the bank and other creditors. As champion of the debt arrears clearance process, working with His Excellency former President Chisano, who is here with us, we have supported Zimbabwe and they are making significant progress. I am pleased that the International Monetary Fund's staff monitor program will soon be concluded. And yesterday we were there. It was such an emotive time to see how far we have come. There's hope ahead. The past 10 years were filled with never before seen multiple and simultaneous crises. The COVID-19 to geopolitical tensions emanating from the Russian war in Ukraine, which in turn triggered a global food crisis. At the same time, a global debt crisis and devastating climate change posed untold hardships and challenges. In the midst of this polycrisis, your bank, the African Development Bank Group, strongly supported by its shareholders, stood strong and innovatively supported Africa as it navigated each crisis. Africa survived. Africa was resilient. Africa grew out of them all, and Africa is still standing and standing tall. Thanks for your support. We stood up for Africa when it mattered the most, the COVID-19 crisis. Africa, the continent with the least room to maneuver, was effectively left alone in the midst of the most challenging global crisis it had ever faced in decades. No vaccines, no medicines, no oxygen, no masks, no gloves. As developed countries got second and third COVID-19 booster shots, vaccines, Africa was scrambling for just one shot for its population. With the support of our shareholders, the African Development Bank swung into bold action and launched a $3 billion social bond, the largest ever in world history at that time. To support Africa, we set up a crisis response facility for up to $10 billion for counter-cyclical support for our countries. Walking away from home, my exemplary staff and board of directors, we worked hard and we delivered more for Africa even in the midst of all of that. Today, the African Development Bank Group, Your Excellencies, is implementing a $3 billion program for quality health infrastructure. A $3 billion program again for the development of local pharmaceutical manufacturing capacity in Africa. We created new institutions, such as the African Pharmaceutical Technology Foundation, to enable Africa to gain access to intellectual property rights and to protected technologies and processes for manufacturing vaccines and medicines. We strongly supported African agriculture, and in the process increased Africa's capacity to feed itself. Your Excellencies, in 10 years, our work allowed 104 million Africans to achieve food security and provided 13 million farmers with access to improved agricultural technologies. I see the impact of our work in supporting Africa to avoid a looming food crisis predicted when the war of Russia in Ukraine broke out. The news headlines were awash with predictions of a food crisis in Africa, as the continent stood to lose 30 million tons of food wheat, maize, and oilseeds imported from Russia and Ukraine. The African Development Bank Group swung into immediate action with a $1.5 billion emergency food production facility. Our Feed Africa plan worked. In just 2 years, Your Excellencies, our work had allowed 14 million farmers across 30 countries to have access to improved seeds and fertilizers. They produced 44 million metric tons of food. That is 14 million metric tons of food than what we were losing from Russia and Ukraine. That's 116% above the target that we set. And the total value of the food, $17.3 billion US. Thanks to the bank's support, Ethiopia increased its agricultural areas, producing heat-tolerant wheat varieties, which grew from 5,000 hectares when we started there in 2018 to over 650,000 hectares by 2023. Today, Ethiopia is self-sufficient in wheat, and in less than 4 years, Ethiopia has become a net exporter of wheat. The landmark Feed Africa Summit, which was held in Dakar, then under President Macky Sall, brought together over 30 heads of state and government who signed the Food and Agricultural Delivery Compact to accelerate food production and food sovereignty in their countries, which was approved unanimously then by the African Union. We mobilized $72 billion globally for Africa's food security, working with our partners. The inspiration of the Feed Africa Summit informed our next bold action to achieve universal access to electricity in Africa. To fast-track access to electricity, the African Development Bank and the World Bank, myself and the president of the World Bank, Ajay Banga, we jointly launched what's called the Mission 300 in Dar es Salaam to connect 300 million people in Africa to electricity by 2030. At the Africa Energy Summit in January of this year, we organized, hosted, and co-chaired, along with Our Excellency, President Samia Suluhu Hassan, a historic gathering of over 48 African countries, where leaders unanimously endorsed the Dakar Dar es Salaam Declaration on Energy Access with the full support of the African Union. Your Excellencies, the declaration marks an unprecedented continental commitment to accelerate energy access through coordinated national actions, regional interconnections, and enhanced investment in renewables and grid expansion. I'm pleased to say, Your Excellencies, that we mobilized $55 billion in support of these national energy compacts. Also, we advanced on providing universal access to clean cooking for women in Africa with a successful African Clean Cooking Summit held in Paris, again co-chaired by our dynamic president, Madam Samia Suluhu Hassan, and we mobilized $4 billion for clean cooking. I mean, why is it everybody in the world cooks with gas and nobody dies? Why is it that African women are collecting firewood and charcoal and dung to cook? It doesn't make any sense. And by the grace of God, we started dealing with that particular issue. We must be able to have our women cook and cook with pride like anybody else in the world. The African Development Bank launched what's called the Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa, AGIA, supported by the G7 to mobilize $10 billion for climate-resilient infrastructure all across Africa. We strongly supported the youth and the women. The bank's Affirmative Finance Action for Women in Africa, AFAWA, approved $2.5 billion in support of over 24,000, in fact it's $2.9 billion, in support of over 24,000 women-owned businesses all across Africa, expanding access of women businesses to finance through 185 financial institutions in 44 countries. And Excellencies, our women in Africa, I mean, I've never seen a bird that flies with two wings. Every bird has two wings. We have to make sure that women in Africa have access to finance, period. In support of the youth and to help unleash their potential, the bank launched what's called the Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Banks, which will expand access to finance to create youth-based wealth all across Africa. We expanded the voice and participation of civil society. I was with them yesterday. Across all of the bank's projects, we instituted a civil society forum each year to interact, to engage more transparently. Today, rather than being adversaries, we are strategic partners. We significantly strengthened the financial architecture in Africa, thanks to our African Development Fund donors. We raised $8.9 billion for African Development Fund's 16th replenishment. And that is the largest ever in the history of the fund since its establishment in 1973. We innovated and developed a new financial framework that will allow the African Development Fund to mobilize $27 billion from the global capital markets. It's my time here to actually ask that we please thank all of our donors to the African Development Fund, because without that, we'll not be able to be supporting all of these 37 countries. Thank you. The shareholders of the bank showed extraordinary support and confidence in our leadership and management of the bank. When I was first elected president in 2015, the capital of the bank stood at $93 billion. From 2015 to 2025, with the support of our shareholders, we grew the bank's capital from $93 billion to $318 billion. Thank you. We put that expanded capital into remarkable use with unprecedented financial support to all of our African countries. Let me explain for perspectives. Since the establishment of the African Development Bank in 1964 until 2014, its total approvals were $118 billion. However, in the past 10 years alone, under my presidency with our boards of directors and my staff, our total approvals were $102 billion. That represents 46% of all the approvals in the history of the African Development Bank Group. We have also ramped up our disbursements. The total disbursements of the bank group in the last 10 years alone at $59 billion represents almost half of all the disbursements in the history of the African Development Bank Group. These are not just numbers. Thanks to your collective support, this represents a new dynamism, a scale of transformative impact of the African Development Bank Group that at any point in its history, we provided significant financial support to African financial institutions, from commercial banks to regional development finance institutions to multilateral development finance institutions, boosting their capital bases. Under my presidency, with our board of directors and my staff, we set up and built Africa 50 from scratch to what it is today, for which I'm extremely proud. A first-rate private equity infrastructure investment platform with portfolio companies now worth over $7 billion. We work very closely and strongly and supported the African Union. This includes a provision of about $12 million in institutional support, over $17 million to the African Continental Free Trade Area, and over $27 million to the African Center for Disease Control. The African Investment Forum, launched by the bank and its partners in 2018, has since mobilized $225 billion in investment interest in Africa across several projects. Excellencies, the African Development Bank has strongly supported several African countries in tackling the effects of climate change. The African Adaptation Acceleration Program, which we call AAAP, is financing commitments of $25 billion from the bank and in partnership with the Global Center for Adaptation. And I'm glad to say, Your Excellencies, today, it is the largest climate adaptation program in the world. Over the past 10 years, Your Excellencies, the African Development Bank Group has become a global leader in financial innovations that have enabled us to stretch our balance sheets and deliver exceptional impact. The bank led with the use of synthetic securitization in 2015, becoming the first multilateral development bank in the world to do so. The African Development Bank also launched a $750 million hybrid capital in the global capital market in 2024, becoming also the first multilateral financial institution in the world to do so, opening up a new asset class for investors globally. The African Development Bank, your bank, spearheaded, together with the Inter-American Development Bank, the framework to allow the rechanneling of the IMF special drawing rights, SDRs, to multilateral development banks, which we can leverage by 4 to 8 times to provide much-needed financial constitutional financing at scale. Excellencies, the image, the respect, and global confidence in the bank have soared through our active and unprecedented participation in the summit meetings of the G7 and G20. With your backing, as President, along with my colleagues and our board of directors, we have amplified the voice and the needs of Africa at the highest levels globally. As my mandate that you have given me as President of the bank draws to a close, I am extremely proud of the work that we have done and the incredible impact of the bank has had on the daily lives of millions of Africans. This has been a collaborative effort that we all can take pride in. We maintained the stellar AAA credit ratings of the bank for 10 years under very difficult circumstances with your support, with all the 3 global credit rating agencies, from Fitch to Moody's to Standard & Poor's, even in the most difficult times of COVID. And I want to thank all my governors. I knew how many calls I made. I knew how many doors I locked. I knew how many conversations I had. But I knew how much your heart was with us that helped us to survive and to continue to sail despite all the challenges. To you, our governors and countries, I say thank you. Thank you so very much. It was not an easy thing, but I'm extremely grateful to you. Your Excellencies, the independent review of the governance systems of the African Development Bank by our governors, as for in 2020, was completed about 2 months ago. The review showed that the African Development Bank is very well governed, respects the independence of its oversight organs, and is at par with all of its peers globally. In view of all that transpired in 2020, I feel vindicated and enormously happy. I am exceptionally proud of the African Development Group that I lead. We developed a new institution, the African Financial Stability Mechanism, unanimously approved by the African Union to support Africa to refinance its debt on global capital markets, reduce contagion effects of economic shocks, and be the Africa's first financial safety net. The African Development Bank, your bank, is today globally recognized and respected. Your Excellencies, the African Development Bank was ranked as the best multilateral financial institution in the world by Global Finance. Your bank, the African Development Bank, was ranked for 2 consecutive years the most transparent financial institution globally by Public Watch Fund for our sovereign operations, scoring last year 98.8% on the Transparency Index, the highest ever in the history of the Global Transparency Index. And in 2024, the bank achieved its highest income ever in its 60-year history. The African Development Fund, the concessionary financing institution of the bank, ranked 2nd best in the world and higher than all 55 bilateral financing organizations in all developed countries of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. As I complete my 2 5-year terms as president of the African Development Bank, I am proud of the legacy we are leaving behind, and I say we, it's a collective effort, for my successor, for the bank, and for Africa. We have built a world-class financial institution that will continue to advance Africa's position within a rapidly changing global development and geopolitical environment. I did not walk alone. I walked with an exemplary group of people at different points during my past 10 years. I am thankful for the exemplary support of the boards of directors over the past 10 years, for your strong support, for your strong oversight over our work and operations. And I'd like my board that currently are here today to please stand and be recognized. It's my time to recognize my board of directors. Wherever you are, please stand and be recognized, and I appreciate it. Thank you. They're a very tough board, but we get things done. I am very thankful to you, our board of governors. You have been simply incredible, and you have given us exceptional shareholder support. You were there for us, and you were there with us in the up times. You were there with us in the down times. You never doubted us. I'm indebted to you for your support. To our host country, thank you very much for your incredible hospitality. My special thanks and gratitude goes again to my senior brother, President Alassane Ouattara, who steadfastly stood by me, counseled me, supported me throughout my 10 years here as head of the bank. Monsieur le Président,
Mr. President, I consider myself Ivorian. I lived here for 15 years before being elected president of the bank. I spent 5 years in Bouaké. I was principal economist for the Rice Development Association in Africa. I was in Korogo, Man, Ojene, Galoa, Daloa. I supervised 10 Ivorian students at the center, and 9 of them had excellent with the congratulations of the examination panel. So apart from Nigeria, my country of birth, this is the country in which I have spent most of my life. So I consider myself Ivorian. Thank you, my dear brother, Mr. President. You were there. You supported me each time. Thank you, Mr. President. I thank the government and people of Cote d'Ivoire as well.
Now, under me, they approved my vision and our vision to build a new world-class headquarters for the African Development Bank right here in Abidjan. Je précise, ça sera le...
This will be the headquarters of the bank, the new headquarters of the bank.
Sky, it will send out a powerful signal for la Côte d'Ivoire, la banque.
For Cote d'Ivoire, the African Development Bank is here to stay. We are here to stay.
But please, no person is perfect, and no person is infallible. I have given my very best and made my own mistakes, all with good intentions. If in the course of my passionate and relentless drive to accelerate the agenda of Africa, I have offended some in word or in deed, through acts of commission or acts of omission, please know that it was never personal. Where applicable, I ask for your forgiveness. I would like to express my deepest appreciation to my staff for your dedication, for your hard work, for your diligence, for your commitment, for your dependability. Literally sleepless nights on missions, at global events, on project and country visits. You put up with my habit of working late. I never sleep. They know I never sleep. C'est pas un président qui dort, you dors pas.
I'm not a president who sleeps. I don't sleep.
Sometimes in the early hours of the morning, you show remarkable resilience, but today I must owe you an apology. I apologize for denying you sleep. You, my staff, are the ones that I will miss the most. You are simply amazing. You work extremely hard, and you delivered big for Africa. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your selfless work and loyal support. We have come a long way, and we did it all for Africa. Here is a high five to all of you, and keep the faith. And to my darling wife, Grace, I am deeply grateful for your being my rock. You prayed for me. You encouraged me. You inspired me. You sacrificed for me. You stayed unshakable by my side at all times. We weathered some heavy storms together, but God was with us. You always reminded me of the God who was with me on the mountaintop is also the one with me in the valley. Today, together, we made it to the mountaintops, we went through the valleys and the waters, and by the grace of God, we did not drown. Thank you very much, my love. Together, we gave African Development Bank and Africa our all. I'm very grateful to you, and I'm glad the best decision I ever made in my life was to marry you. Honestly, gave Africa my heart, my mind, and my all. I fought for what I believe were in Africa's best interests every single day and every turn in my 10 years as president. I will continue to serve Africa today and well into the future by God's grace. I am thoroughly convinced that God did not make a mistake in creating me as an African. I took my oath of office for a second time on September 1st, 2020. I made a simple prayer. God, as I start my second time as president of the African Development Bank and humble myself before you, I ask that you give me wisdom and that Africa will shine and prosper. Together with all of our shareholders, help us to make Africa shine. That is because I know that without God, I am absolutely nothing. For all we have achieved, I owe to God's infinite mercies and grace. So now unto God, the Almighty God, who held us up and blessed the works of all of our hands at the African Development Bank over the last 10 years. To him be all praise and glory forever. May God bless the African Development Bank. May God bless the African Development Fund. May God bless the Nigerian Trust Fund that together make up the African Development Bank. May God bless the boards of directors, past and present. May God bless the boards of governors, past and present. May God bless the amazing staff of the bank, past and present. My hardworking and innovative senior management teams, and of course the incredible members of the Staff Council, past and present. May God comfort the families of some of my staff that I lost along the way over the past 10 years, especially during COVID. I will carry with me the precious memories of your service to the bank. I only wish you are here today. May God send rains of blessings on every one of the bank's 81 shareholder countries to continue to support Africa. And now, to my own beloved country, Nigeria, and the presidents who nominated and supported me for election twice as president, I owe my deepest appreciation and gratitude. To President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, who nominated me for my first term, and to President Muhammadu Buhari, who carried it forward and backed my election and stood stoically behind me during the challenging times and supported my re-election for second time. Thank you, sirs, most sincerely. My immense appreciation and gratitude also go to Nigeria's former presidents and heads of state, President Olusegun Obasanjo, General Abdulsalam Abubakar, General Yakubu Gowon, General Ibrahim Babangida, former vice presidents of Nigeria, Namadi Sambo, Atiku Abubakar, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, the former governor of my state, Ibikunle Amosu, who helped me at various times. They all played major roles in supporting me. And of course, my dear sister, an amazing woman, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. She was then the Minister of Finance of Nigeria, and she was my indefatigable campaigner-in-chief in 2015. To President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, my president, and the Vice President Kashim Shettima, for your support over the past 2 years, I am profoundly very grateful. Thank you for graciously approving the replenishment of the Nigerian Trust Fund for another 15 years. I understand will be about $500 million. May God bless you, all of our heads of state and government in Africa. for your incredible kindness, support for me and my colleagues over the past decade. May God bless the African Union and all the regional economic communities, the private sector, the civil society, the youth and the women of Africa, the multilateral and bilateral institutions, the partner institutions, the media organizations who supported us along the way. Together, we collectively join hands around the baobab tree of Africa's challenges and opportunities. Thank you for believing in Africa. May Africa always thrive and shine. And may our light never grow dim. God bless you all. Merci beaucoup.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the current annual meetings are holding against a global backdrop characterized by some major and complex challenges. The geopolitical conflicts that I mentioned a moment ago in Eastern Europe and in the Middle East, and in fact, I referred to the invasion of Russia by Ukraine and the conflict in Gaza and Israel, but these are clearly conflicts and should be named as such. The intensification of extreme climate events and tightening financial conditions, the dropping public finance or development public aid, as well as the trade wars, exacerbated trade wars since the beginning of the year, have created an unstable global environment where the very principles of multilateralism are being called into question. And in fact, as President Adesina was stating, this has devastating impacts on fragile countries. All of these new events risk jeopardizing, fragilizing developing economies, the African economies, by further exacerbating inflation, the risk of debt overhang, as well as macroeconomic imbalances and social inequalities. So against this backdrop, global economic prospects are quite uncertain, and whereas those of Africa more specifically, the outlook for Africa remains clearly insufficient to meet the needs of the continent itself and its population. The issues of related to terrorism, to civil conflicts, greatly impact our continent, and the strong demographic growth as well is a further challenge, although the growth rates that we are seeing in Africa from that perspective are slightly higher than those in developed countries. In reality, the slightly higher population growth in Africa is positive. According to the IMF, the global growth should, on average, be about 3.1% during 2026-2030. And in Africa, this growth should step up slightly, going from 3.3% in 2024 to 4% in 2026. This slight discrepancy, however, is absorbed by the demographic growth, meaning that the poverty continues to grow and to worsen in many African countries. We need, therefore, more efforts for this growth to deliver better living conditions for populations, for these to deliver transformation and root and branch transformation across our continent. We need massive improvements and investments in social dimensions, as well as the strategic leveraging of strategic levers, of which are human, natural capital, financial resources and innovation. This is why I'd like to welcome and celebrate the overall theme of our annual meetings, which call us to make more of Africa's capital and to ensure that it works better for Africa's development. This is a genuine challenge. It's an opportunity as well to discuss the reforms and policies necessary in order to enable the human, natural, financial, and trade capital to genuinely contribute to the structural transformation of African economies. Excellencies, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, I may not be as eloquent as my younger brother, President Adesina, but let me state that Africa has remarkable potential driven by talented, youthful population, natural resources, abundant mining resources. It's very attractive to investment opportunities and very promising economic outlook. But given this potential, you may ask why such a slow socioeconomic transformation across the continent. This is very much a paradox. As I stated earlier, demographic growth is one of the constraints we face, but a better use of capital should free and enable better use of our capital and accelerate a transition to more inclusive, green, and resilient economies. President Chissano was saying earlier that as he flew over and was nearing Cote d'Ivoire, he was impressed to see all of the green coverage. But I wanted to say, in fact, and I'd like to congratulate my government and the Prime Minister, who's focused very much on tree planting. In fact, on a yearly basis, we have a day rather, and we have an objective focusing on planting a tree for every Ivorian. And so I continue to encourage Ivorians to do so regularly, because our forests, unfortunately, or most of our forests, some 80% of forests were destroyed in the period since independence to date. I'm also happy to note that the themes of our meeting cover some cross-cutting aspects, such as technological progress, which is a key driver for enhanced productivity and leveraging of capital. The experience of East Asian countries demonstrate that a key driver of growth, competitiveness, and economic transformation stems from national technological capacity and growth. And I'm happy to see how interested our youth are in these sectors. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, in support to our member states, the role of financial and development institutions is pivotal in ensuring implementation of integrated policies across the continent. Clearly, each one of our countries needs to improve and fine-tune the implementation of such reform policies. And I'd like to underscore the role of the bank in this particular regard, and I'd like to thank and congratulate the whole African Development Bank group team. Since its inception in 1964, the African Development Bank has profoundly transformed the social and economic realities in Africa. As President Adesina portrayed earlier, we can certainly commend all of these successive presidents, and particularly President Adesina, for all of these accomplishments. So the bar is set quite high for the incoming President, and we will be very eager to follow the progress to be made over the next 5 and 10 years, and to compare that performance to the bar set by President Adesina. Significant resources have been invested by and leveraged by the bank. Many accomplishments have been made across the continent in the areas of food security, industrialization, powering our countries, enhanced transport infrastructure, regional integration policies, as well as the overall improvement in living conditions for our populations. And I would like, in fact, to commend the commitment and the doggedness of President Adesina, as well as his predecessors. They have been able to place our institution at the very, or amongst some of the top institutions worldly. The bank's strategic drive dovetails perfectly with national and international development agendas, of which the United Nations 2030 agenda, as well as the African Union's 2063 agenda for Africa. And in this regard, Cote d'Ivoire, or in Cote d'Ivoire, the African Development Bank has been a key partner in mobilizing necessary resources and ensuring the success of our various national development plan. I would like to avail myself of this opportunity to recognize the quality of the cooperation between Cote d'Ivoire and the AFDB. We have seen substantial support, which has grown twofold in the past 10 years, and we'd like to thank the bank and thank you for focusing on what we have accomplished in the past few years together. Ladies and gentlemen, these annual meetings are convened to, or will be hosting the election of the incoming president of the African Development Bank, and the incoming president will continue the work and continue the vibrant work carried out under the helm of Adesina, and will ensure that the bank continues to play a premier role in the continent's advance towards inclusive social and economic development. I'm convinced that during the exchanges we will have during these annual meetings, I thought my statement was as long as President Adesina's, but in any case, I am convinced, as I was saying, that the discussions we will have during these annual meetings will shed light on strategies and various measures able to accelerate Africa's development. You see, Adesina, I seem to be quoting you here. So let me close by stating how proud we are to host the African Development Bank, and therefore to declare the annual meetings of the African Development Bank group open. And thank you once again, each one of you.